Hiking is supposed to be an escape from fresh air, breathtaking views. The bitter cold of the Deoladhar Mountains was unforgiving that day, the kind of chill that seeps into your bones and makes every step a battle. For Tom Howard, a 27-year-old British hiker, and his friend, the trek had been meant as an adventure, an escape into the breathtaking beauty of the Himalayas, a challenge to push themselves against nature's raw and untamed power. But what they didn't know was that the path they had chosen was forbidden in the winter months. The risks were too great, the terrain too unstable, and soon they would pay the ultimate price for that mistake. They had set off on February 14th, trekking from Dharamkot towards the snow line via Triund, a popular yet treacherous route when the mountains were blanketed in ice and snow. The ascent had been challenging but exhilarating. The world stretched out beneath them in an endless sea of white, the silence only broken by the crunch of their boots on frozen ground. But the descent, where most tragedies occur, was where everything went wrong. Somewhere along the way, Tom lost his footing. Maybe the ice gave way beneath him, or perhaps he miscalculated his step. Whatever the reason, he fell. It wasn't just a slip, not something he could brush off with a laugh. His body slammed against the unforgiving rock and ice, ribs shattering on impact. The pain must have been unimaginable. Each breath a struggle, the cold gnawing at his exposed skin as his friend rushed to his side, helpless against the brutal force of nature. His friend, despite his own injuries, knew that time was running out. He left Tom behind and fought his way back down the mountain, desperate for help. The altitude made every breath a battle, but he pushed forward, driven by fear and determination. By the time he reached authorities, night had fallen and the temperature had plummeted even further. A rescue team was quickly assembled. Firefighters, police, and the State Disaster Response Force. They knew what they were up against. The mountain didn't care about urgency. It was a cruel, unyielding force that swallowed people whole if they weren't careful. The team moved as fast as they could, but the path was brutal. By the time they reached Tom, he was barely hanging on, his condition critical. The descent was agonizing. The rescuers placed him on a stretcher, but the icy terrain made every step a grueling struggle. It took them nearly 2 hours to cover just 100 meters. More teams were called in for reinforcement, pushing through the brutal landscape as they fought to get him down to safety. Hours turned into an entire day. And yet, despite all their efforts, despite the sheer willpower of those trying to save him, the mountain had already claimed its victim. Tom was finally brought to an ambulance, more than 24 hours after his fall. But it was too late. He was pronounced dead at the hospital, his body battered from the impact, his liver lacerated, his chest and abdomen ravaged by internal injuries. The fall had been from a significant height. There had never been a real chance. The news sent shockwaves through those who knew him. Tom had been more than just an adventurer. He had been brilliant, ambitious, a young man who had attended the prestigious Cranleigh School before going on to Durham University. He had earned a master's degree in natural sciences, carving out a promising future for himself at Quantexa, a financial security firm in London. He was someone who had his whole life ahead of him, a life that ended far too soon in the cold, isolated vastness of the Himalayas. Back in England, his family and friends were left reeling, struggling to make sense of the tragedy. The Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office extended their support, but no amount of words or condolences could undo what had happened. The mountains, as breathtaking as they are, do not forgive mistakes. In winter, when the world turns to ice and the air itself feels like knives against the skin, they become something else entirely, a silent predator waiting for one wrong step. Tom had unknowingly stepped into that danger, and like so many before him, he had not been able to escape. What was meant to be an ambitious and exhilarating challenge turned into a harrowing tale of survival, and ultimately a tragic end on the slopes of Mount Whitney, the tallest peak in the contiguous United States. Taylor Rodriguez, a 29-year-old from San Antonio, had set his sights on the summit of this towering 14,505-foot mountain. Little did he know that his journey would soon spiral into the kind of nightmare that strikes fear into the heart of even the most experienced hikers. It was December 30th, 2024, when Rodriguez began his ascent full of anticipation and excitement, but entirely unaware of the battle he was about to face. As the days passed, his family and friends heard nothing, and by January 2nd, 2025, the alarms were raised. Rodriguez was officially reported missing after he failed to check in and didn't return as planned. His whereabouts were unknown. The mountain was holding him captive. Inyo County Search and Rescue sprang into action, joined by the dedicated team of the Inyo County Sheriff's Office. The Whitney Trail and Mountaineers Route, popular paths to the summit, were scoured, with the hope that someone might have seen the young hiker, or perhaps had some clue about his last known movements. The search was urgent, but in a vast wilderness like Mount Whitney, the mountain had its own plans. The hours ticked by with no sign of Rodriguez. As the days blurred into each other, the search grew more desperate, with officials turning to social media, hoping fellow climbers who had braved the treacherous trails between December 30 and January 2 might hold the key to finding Rodriguez. But the mountain seemed to keep its silence, unwilling to give up its secrets. Then, on January 4th, the unthinkable was confirmed. Rodriguez's body was discovered at an elevation of 12,000 feet near the North Fork of Lone Pine Creek Trail. The rescue teams, exhausted and battered by the elements, had found what they feared most. The reality set in the mountain had claimed its prize, and this brave adventurer's journey had ended in the harshest of ways. We extend our deepest condolences to Taylor's family and friends during this difficult time. Inyo County Search and Rescue shared in a heartbreaking post. Rodriguez had initially set out from San Antonio on December 28th, driven by the dream of summiting Mount Whitney, but his fate took an unexpected turn when he changed his plans and opted to attempt the peak on his own. The details of his final days are still unknown. What happened between his departure and the fateful discovery remains a haunting mystery, the mountain's cruel nature obscuring the answers in the wind, snow, and brutal elements. For those who venture into the unforgiving wilderness, Mount Whitney is a reminder of the delicate balance between human ambition and nature's raw power. Rodriguez's tragic end underscores the unpredictability of even the most well-planned expeditions, and the devastating reality that sometimes the mountains don't give up their secrets without a heavy price. As the search and rescue teams pack up, the mountain holds its silence, leaving us with only questions. How close did Rodriguez come to the summit? What happened in those final days on the mountain? For his loved ones, the answers may never come, but the memory of his journey will live on, a sobering reminder of the dangers and beauty that lie in the world's highest places. For months, her disappearance remained a haunting mystery. Sahila Sangrait, a 21-year-old woman with a bright spirit and dreams of a fresh start, vanished without a trace in August 2024. No signs, no clues, just silence. Her family held on to hope, replaying every last memory, grasping at any possible explanation. But deep down, an unshakable fear crept in. The longer she remained missing, the harder it was to ignore the dreadful possibility that something terrible had happened. Then, on March 4th, 2025, the worst possible news arrived. A hiker navigating the rugged, isolated terrain near Hill City made a grim discovery. A body, badly decomposed, abandoned in the wilderness. The remote location, the condition of the remains, the way she had simply vanished, it all pointed to something horrifying. The confirmation came soon after. The body was Sahila's. Her family's worst fears had come true. Their daughter, their sister, their friend, gone. And with that devastating truth came another. Someone had done this to her. But who and why? Authorities wasted no time. Days later, they arrested 24-year-old U.S. Air Force Airman Quintarius Chappelle. The charge? Second-degree murder. The revelation sent shockwaves through the community. Not just because Sahila had been killed, but because of where it had allegedly happened, Ellsworth Air Force Base, where Chappelle was stationed. How did she end up there? What happened behind those heavily guarded gates? And perhaps the most chilling question of all, how long had the truth been buried before her body was finally found? Sahila had been last seen in Eagle Butte, staying with a friend. She told them she planned to head back to Box Elder, the town where she was from, to grab some belongings before setting off on a long-anticipated trip to California. It was supposed to be a fresh start. Instead, it became the beginning of a nightmare. No one knows for sure what happened next. Did she ever make it to Box Elder? Or was she intercepted before she could get there? How did she end up at Ellsworth Air Force Base? And most disturbingly, was she held there for a time before she was killed? Authorities have yet to reveal the exact nature of Sahila's connection to Chappelle. Was he a friend, a boyfriend, someone she trusted? Or was this a chance encounter that spiraled into something horrific? The military has remained tight-lipped, offering little more than formal statements. But one sentence from the base's commander, Colonel Derek Oakley, stood out, a stark and chilling reminder of the weight of what had happened. "We hold airmen accountable for their actions," Oakley stated. "If service members are found in violation of military or civilian law, they will be punished." It was a careful, measured statement, one that suggested the Air Force was prepared to distance itself from Chappelle if he was convicted. But for Sahila's family, it wasn't enough. They didn't just want accountability, they wanted the full truth. Sahila was not just another name on a missing persons list. She was a daughter, a friend, a young woman with hopes, ambitions, and a future she was eager to chase. Those who knew her spoke of her as a mesmerizing presence, witty, intelligent, full of light despite the hardships she had endured. She had been dealt a difficult hand in life, but had met every challenge with resilience and a smile. That light, that resilience, had been stolen. As the case moves forward, her loved ones are left to grapple with unbearable grief and a mountain of unanswered questions. Why was she killed? What happened in the days after she vanished? Who else might have known the truth before her body was finally found? The investigation remains ongoing, involving a vast network of local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies, including the FBI and the Bureau of Indian Affairs Missing and Murdered Unit. Authorities are urging anyone with information to come forward, but for now, justice for Sahila remains just out of reach. In the wake of this tragedy, her family has created a GoFundMe to help cover funeral expenses, ensuring that Sahila, who was known to those closest to her as Shy, receives the farewell she deserves. The fundraiser paints a portrait of the woman she was, of a life filled with hope and kindness. Shy is a beautiful, inclusive, and mesmerizing spirit, it reads. She attacked life head-on with a smile on her face. Somewhere along the way, that light was extinguished. Someone made the decision to take her life, and now, those who loved her are left with only one hope, that the full truth will come to light, and that whoever is responsible for her death will finally answer for what they have done. What started as an exhilarating New Year's Day adventure in the Italian Alps has spiraled into a chilling tragedy. Samuel Harris, 35, and Aziz Ziriat, 36, both experienced hikers from London, had set off into the Adamello Range with a plan to trek from mountain hut to mountain hut, immersing themselves in the breathtaking but unforgiving beauty of the Italian wilderness. It was a journey they had done before, a test of skill, endurance, and brotherhood. But this time, something went terribly wrong. Days passed without a word. Their families weren't immediately alarmed. After all, Harris and Ziriat lived for this kind of isolation. They were known for pushing their limits, venturing into remote landscapes where phone signals faded into silence. Their friends reassured themselves that the pair was simply off the grid, enjoying the vast solitude of the mountains. Their loved ones had trusted their expertise. They go a couple of times a year. It wasn't surprising that they had no signal they like going off the grid, recalled Joe Stone, a close friend of Ziriat. But then January 6th arrived the day they were supposed to fly home. They never boarded their flight, they never checked in, they never even made it back to civilization. And that was when concern turned into fear. The search began under impossible conditions. Thick fog rolled in like a curtain, blocking all visibility. Snow piled up in heavy sheets, concealing every trace of movement. Rescuers tried to send helicopters to scan the peaks and valleys, but the relentless weather forced them to retreat. The mountains, it seemed, were refusing to give up their secrets. Finally, after days of battling nature's fury, a breakthrough rescuers, guided by the hikers' last phone activity, reached an isolated section of the range, near the treacherous south face of Carre Alto. And that's where they found him. Samuel Harris lay buried under the snow, lifeless, at the foot of a sheer rockfall. His backpack and gear were strewn nearby, half consumed by ice and time. Had he fallen? Slipped on the unforgiving terrain? Had an avalanche swept him away? The answers lay somewhere in the frozen silence, but one thing was certain: he hadn't made it out. But where was Aziz Ziriat? The discovery of Harris's body only deepened the mystery. There was no sign of his friend, no immediate clues to his fate. Had he tried to find help? Was he still out there, trapped, waiting for rescue? Or had the mountains already claimed him too, hiding his body somewhere beneath the endless drifts of snow? Rescuers fought against time, pushing forward with everything they had, but the mountain had its own plans. Within hours of finding Harris, the weather turned. Once more, thick fog descended. Visibility vanished, and the threat of avalanches became too great. The search had to be suspended. Now, as the storm rages on, the search for Ziriat remains frozen in uncertainty. His loved ones can do nothing but wait, caught between hope and heartbreak. Did he manage to find shelter, waiting for a rescue that may never come? Or has the Adamello Range taken him, keeping its final secret buried beneath ice and stone? The only way to find out is to go back up the mountain. And when the weather clears, that's exactly what they'll do, because one man is still missing, and time is running out. The wind roared through Rhode Island that day, relentless and unforgiving. It tore through power lines, left entire neighborhoods in darkness, and even ripped the roof from a mill building in Taunton. It was the kind of storm that demanded attention, a force of nature that made people stop and take shelter. But for Edward Klisch, a 62-year-old man from Uxbridge, Massachusetts, the wilderness had always been a place of peace, a refuge from the chaos of the world. On March 7, 2025, he set out on the Nipmuc Trail in Burrillville, Rhode Island, likely unaware of the danger looming above. It was a trail he had walked before, familiar and quiet, offering the kind of solitude only nature can provide. But as the wind howled through the trees, branches twisted and strained against the force, some bending, others breaking. One, massive and heavy, finally gave way. Hours passed before his family found him. The sight was devastating. Edward lay unresponsive beneath the crushing weight of a tree branch, his body battered by the very nature he had loved so deeply. There was no warning, no time to react. One moment, he had been walking through the wilderness, breathing in the fresh air, and the next, fate had intervened in the cruelest way possible. Emergency responders rushed to the scene, but the damage had already been done. He was taken to Landmark Medical Center in Woonsocket, but there was nothing more they could do. The windstorm that had left thousands without power had claimed a life. Investigators from the Burrillville Police Department and the Rhode Island Medical Examiner's Office are still piecing together the final moments of Edward's life. Was the tree already weakened, waiting for just the right gust to send it crashing down? Or was it simply a case of being in the wrong place at the worst possible moment? The uncertainty only adds to the tragedy. It's a terrifying reminder of how unpredictable nature can be, how a peaceful walk can turn deadly in an instant. But Edward Klisch's story is not just one of tragedy. Those who knew him refused to let his final moments define him. He was a man of adventure, a spirit drawn to the beauty of the world around him. He embraced life, stepping into each new day with curiosity and warmth. His obituary captured what those closest to him knew best. His presence was a beacon of joy, his impact immeasurable. He will not just be remembered in words, but in the places he loved: the winding trails, the rustling trees, the crisp morning air of the wilderness. His spirit lingers there, in the quiet moments of nature's beauty, in the whispering wind that carries his memory forward. Zion National Park is a place of beauty and danger, where breathtaking views mask the unforgiving terrain beneath. Hikers travel from all over the world to explore its towering cliffs and winding trails, seeking adventure and awe-inspiring sights. But for one man, what should have been an ordinary trek turned into a fatal mystery, one that has left visitors and authorities searching for answers. On the morning of Sunday, February 2nd, 2025, a chilling call came in. A hiker had been found motionless on the Canyon Overlook Trail, one of Zion's most well-traveled paths. Park officials were alerted at 7:15 a.m., and emergency responders rushed to the scene. Every second counted. Was he injured? Was he still alive? But as they arrived, hope quickly faded. The 37-year-old man was already gone. The Canyon Overlook Trail isn't the most treacherous path in Zion, but it demands respect. It stretches just 1 mile, a hike that usually takes about an hour. But don't let the distance fool you. Steep drop-offs, shifting terrain, and sudden elevation changes make this a trail where one wrong step can mean disaster. Yet, something about this case is unsettling. How did an experienced adult hiker meet such an abrupt and tragic fate on a trail considered moderate? If it had been a sheer cliff face like Angel's Landing, perhaps the cause would be obvious. But here, the circumstances remain clouded in uncertainty. Was it a simple misstep in the early morning hours, a sudden medical emergency, or did something else happen? Something more sinister lurking in the shadows of Zion. As the Washington County Sheriff's Office launches an investigation, the questions are piling up. Was he hiking alone? Were there any witnesses? Did he suffer a fatal fall? Or did his body simply give out under the strain of the climb? Authorities remain tight-lipped, fueling speculation and concern. Those who have walked the Canyon Overlook Trail before can't help but feel a chill at the thought. How could someone set out for a simple hike and never return? One moment, he was climbing the rocky path, taking in the beauty of Zion. The next, his life was over, leaving only a lifeless body on the trail as the park's towering cliffs stood silent. This wasn't supposed to happen, but in nature's raw and unpredictable embrace, even the most familiar trails can turn deadly. And until the truth is uncovered, one question will haunt every hiker who sets foot on that trail. Could this happen to me? The roar of the waterfall echoed through the dense rainforest, its mist hanging in the humid air like a veil. Carl Newman, a 49-year-old man from Waikapu, had spent his life surrounded by the beauty of Hawaii, the land he called home. The winding paths, the towering cliffs, the lush greenery, this was familiar ground. But nature, no matter how well you think you know it, can be as ruthless as it is breathtaking. It was supposed to be an ordinary hike, a peaceful escape into the wild beauty of Maui with a group of acquaintances. The trails near Hana Highway were legendary, a winding passage through paradise itself, lush rainforests, cascading waterfalls, and narrow, treacherous pathways carved into the cliffs. The kind of scenery that could take your breath away in an instant. And in one tragic moment it did. As they made their way along the trail, Carl moved carefully, taking in the view, the endless blue sky stretching above the emerald canopy. Then, in a split second, everything changed. He lost his footing. Maybe it was a misstep. Maybe the ground beneath him gave way. It didn't matter. The moment gravity took hold, there was no stopping it. He plummeted down the jagged cliffside, the sheer force of the fall stealing any chance of survival. 60 feet. That's how far he fell. Long enough for terror to set in, short enough for the brutal impact to be instantaneous. By the time his body came to rest near the base of the waterfall, it was already too late. A call for help sent emergency responders racing to the scene, but reaching Carl was no simple task. The rugged terrain, the towering height of the fall, this was not a place easily accessed. A helicopter had to be brought in just to recover his body, the hum of its blades cutting through the heavy silence that had settled over the forest. Authorities quickly ruled out foul play. It was a tragic accident, a grim reminder of how unforgiving the elements could be, even to those who knew them best. An autopsy was scheduled, but there was no mystery to unravel. A moment's misstep, a cruel twist of fate, and a life was gone. The Maui Police Department extended their condolences, but words could only do so much. The beauty of the Hana Highway remained unchanged, its waterfalls still spilling over the cliffs, its narrow bridges still winding through the rainforest. Travelers would continue to come, drawn by the promise of adventure, by the magic of the island. But Carl's story would serve as a silent warning. Nature does not discriminate. It does not hesitate. And sometimes, even paradise has a dark side. On Sunday, February 2nd, 2025, a breathtaking hike turned into a nightmare that no one could have predicted. The serene beauty of the Punch Bowls area near Santa Paula, a place that should have been filled with awe and adventure, became the backdrop for a tragic, heart-wrenching tale. A man in his mid-40s, later identified as John Antonio Madrigal, 44, from Oxnard, lost his life after an unforgiving fall into the icy, rushing waters. What was supposed to be a simple hike with a close friend ended in desperate attempts to save a life, and ultimately, crushing defeat. It was around noon when the Ventura County Sheriff's Office received the disturbing report. A hiker had plunged into the water and was unable to recover. In the early moments, no one knew exactly what had transpired, but as rescue teams rushed to the scene, the truth began to unfold. Madrigal had been hiking with a close friend, the kind of bond that made the wilderness seem smaller, more manageable. But as the two hiked through the rugged terrain, tragedy struck without warning. The water of Punch Bowls, beautiful yet deceiving, took hold of him in a flash. Madrigal's friend, a devastated witness to the horror, did everything he could to save him. In a split second, his best friend was gone, pulled into the frigid depths. Desperation flooded his every thought. Without hesitation, he threw himself into the water, twice, hoping to reach Madrigal before it was too late. The coldness of the water, the strength of the current, nothing could overcome the overwhelming power of nature that trapped his friend. Each second felt like an eternity, but despite his frantic attempts, Madrigal couldn't be reached. With no choice left, the friend did the unthinkable. He ran for miles trying to find a signal, hoping against hope that he could reach someone, anyone who might be able to help. His heart pounded in his chest, his breath shallow as panic overtook him. He had to do something. He had to reach 9/11. The mountain, the water, the vastness of it all was suddenly suffocating. After what must have felt like an eternity, he managed to text for help, but by the time the rescue teams arrived, it was already too late. Later, when the Ventura County Medical Examiner's Office confirmed the devastating news, it was revealed that Madrigal had drowned the water, claiming him in the worst possible way. But there was more to the tragedy. Atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease was found to have played a part, complicating the already dire situation. What should have been a routine outing had turned into a frantic, impossible struggle for survival. A life lost to a mix of the harsh elements and an unforgiving body. As the days went by, the details began to emerge. Preliminary reports from the sheriff's office initially suggested that Madrigal had fallen into the water, but the friend, speaking out for the first time, shed a different light on what happened. According to him, Madrigal had dove in intentionally, perhaps unaware of the dangers the water held. What went through Madrigal's mind in those last moments? Did he misjudge the situation? Did he think he could handle the water, only to be overwhelmed in the blink of an eye? We may never know. But what was clear is the agony that followed the helplessness of a friend who tried everything he could to save someone he loved. The pain of watching someone so close slip away, knowing you did your best, but it wasn't enough. The mountain, with its beauty, had claimed another victim, and there was nothing anyone could do to change it. As the investigation continues, the death has been ruled an accident. Yet, for those who knew Madrigal, the questions linger. How close was he to safety? Was there anything anyone could have done to stop this? The Punch Bowls, a place that attracts so many with its beauty, has now become a solemn reminder of how quickly things can go wrong and how fragile life truly is. The wilderness can be both breathtaking and brutal, and in this tragic event it claimed a man, a friend, and a memory that will never fade. The discovery on Bell Mountain sent shockwaves through the quiet wilderness. A pair of young lives ended in the most brutal, inexplicable way. On March 8, 2025, a hiker stumbled upon the bodies of 19-year-old twin brothers, Qadir and Nazir Lewis, lying lifeless at the summit. Both had been shot. Just the day before, they had missed their 7 a.m. flight to Boston, where they were supposed to visit friends. Now they were gone, and the circumstances surrounding their deaths only deepened the mystery. Authorities quickly leaned toward a chilling explanation: murder-suicide. But to those who knew the twins best, that theory made no sense. Their family immediately pushed back, refusing to accept that one would turn on the other. They had been inseparable since birth, protective of one another in a way only twins could understand. They weren't just brothers, they were best friends. Their uncle, Rahim Bronner, struggled to make sense of the tragedy. "They love each other," he said. "I couldn't imagine them hurting each other because I've never seen them even get into a fist fight before. The very idea that one of them could have snapped and killed the other before turning the gun on himself felt impossible. Yet the facts refused to align. The twins had no history of violence, no struggles with mental health that anyone was aware of, and no known reason to be on that mountain in the first place. There was no suicide note, no alarming behavior in the days leading up to their deaths. The family was left with a chilling question: if they didn't do this to each other, then who did, and why? Their aunt, Yasmin Bronner, voiced what so many were thinking. "Something happened in those mountains, and we want answers," she said. She and the rest of the family couldn't shake the feeling that someone else was involved, pointing out one eerie detail. The brothers had never been to Bell Mountain before. They weren't hikers. They had no known connection to the area, and yet, somehow, they ended up there, miles from the airport where they had last been seen, their plane tickets still tucked inside their wallets. It was as if they had vanished for a day, only to be found in a place that made no sense, under circumstances that made even less. The family also questioned how the twins got to Bell Mountain. It wasn't close to the airport, and neither of them had a car with them that day. If they hadn't planned to go there, then who took them? And more importantly, who was the last person to see them alive? Qadir and Nazir had dreams. They wanted to start their own clothing brand, a vision they had talked about for years. They had a strong support system, a family that would have noticed if something was wrong. None of it pointed to a tragic act of desperation. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation confirmed that autopsies had been completed, but the final forensic results were still pending. Without those answers, speculation only grew, fueled by the unsettling contradictions in the case. The family, desperate for clarity, launched a GoFundMe to cover funeral expenses, hoping that, at the very least, they could lay the twins to rest with dignity. For now, Bell Mountain holds its secrets. But for the Lewis family, one truth remains undeniable. Qadir and Nazir didn't go there alone. Someone led them up that mountain, and somewhere, that person still walks free. For over 2 decades, Ann Houghton was a guardian of the Great Smoky Mountains, a passionate hiker, a tireless volunteer, and a woman whose love for the wilderness ran deep. She knew these trails better than most, having spent more than 4,000 hours navigating them, educating visitors, and preserving the land she held dear. But on a routine overnight hike, something went terribly wrong. Ann set out on Tuesday, 28th January, just as she had countless times before. There was no reason to suspect danger, no warnings, no bad weather, no sign that this hike would be different. But when she didn't return the next day, unease crept in. At first, many believed she was simply delayed, maybe enjoying an extra moment in the place she loved most. But as the days stretched on with no word, that hope turned into something darker. By Saturday, when she failed to show up for her volunteer shift, alarm bells rang, A full-scale search began, with multiple agencies racing against time to find her. Her vehicle was discovered at Smokemont Campground, a haunting reminder that she had ventured into the wilderness but never made it back. The search pushed deeper, covering miles of rugged terrain, Bradley Fork, Chastine Creek, Hughes Ridge, until finally, nearly a week after she vanished, the heartbreaking truth was uncovered. At 1:53 p.m. on Sunday, February 2nd, Anne's body was found just a quarter mile from the Enlow Creek Trail, so close to the path, so agonizingly near to safety, yet something had stopped her from making it back. Authorities have yet to determine her cause of death, but they have ruled out foul play. Still, the mystery lingers. What happened to a woman so experienced, so deeply connected to these mountains that even the most challenging trails had never fazed her before? Her loss sent shockwaves through the community. Anne was an enduring and beloved member of our Smokies community, said Charles Sellers, acting superintendent of Great Smoky Mountains National Park. She was a dedicated volunteer and avid hiker who shared her passion for the park with many visitors. Great Smoky Mountains National Park offers condolences to her family and friends. The search effort had been massive, with the teams from Cherokee Fire and Rescue, Bucer, the Macon Volunteer Fire Department, the Cowie Volunteer Fire Department, the Appalachian Mountain Rescue Team, and the Jackson County Sheriff's Office working tirelessly to find her. But in the end, the Smokies took back one of their own. Anne's dedication was unmatched since 2004. She had taken few, if any, breaks in service, the Park Service said. In 2022, her tireless efforts earned her a nomination for the prestigious George and Helen Hartzog Award for Outstanding Volunteer Service. Her tragic death raises more questions than answers. Was it a sudden medical emergency, a misstep on the trail, or something more sinister lurking in the wilderness? Whatever happened in those final moments, one thing is certain: Anne Houghton's legacy will forever be etched into the very mountains she gave her life to.